Release with me. That's house. Do you know what it means when you walk into that club and you hear that beat?
Good morning. Good morning. Bienvenidos, bienvenidas to Brooklyn College. Woo! I am Dr. Maria Perez y Gonzalez, and I am the chairperson of the Department of Puerto Rican and Latino Studies. Woo! I have the distinct honor to welcome you to Brooklyn College and this very special event. Weathering the Storm 2017, the Caribbean, Puerto Rico, and the diasporic communities. To see you all here today and to know there is a global community watching live fills my heart with hope. And we desperately need that hope during this time. And along those lines, someone who accepted the call to stand up during this event for Puerto Rico and ser presente is the president of Brooklyn College, President Michelle J. Anderson.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this fantastic academic conference. I am so glad you are all here today with us, and I want to begin by extending a special welcome to our keynote address. The person who is giving our keynote address, the Mayor of San Juan, Puerto Rico, Carmen Yelén Cruz. She is an outspoken woman. She is a defender of her people. And she is here at Brooklyn College. I want to also acknowledge a couple representatives of the City University of New York, this great institution that we here at Brooklyn College are a part of. First, a member of the CUNY Board of Trustees, Lorraine Cortez Vasquez. The Executive Vice Chancellor of the entire CUNY system, Provost Vita Rabinowitz, is here. She's been a strong supporter of this conference. There are many other distinguished guests who are in the audience and who will be acknowledged a little bit later. But I want to turn to the topic at hand. This fall, the active Atlantic hurricane season, it was one of the most active on record ever. As you know, it had Category 5 Irma and Maria, and Category 4 Jose, decimating people's homes and livelihoods across the Caribbean region and parts of the southern United States. When I heard that my colleagues here at Brooklyn College were going to organize a conference to examine the role of the Academy in responding to natural disasters like this, I was very excited. Because the topic not only has global import, it also touches us here across CUNY and in particular at Brooklyn College. Our campus is home to more than 17,600 students from more than 100 nations, and a great many of them hail from the regions hardest hit by this extraordinary hurricane season. CUNY and its constituent campuses, the 24 campuses that make up the CUNY system, responded quickly to the disaster in Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands. The university created an online hub for information, counseling, disaster relief, and fundraising. The CUNY Board of Trustees passed and approved a substantial tuition break for students from Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands. And here at Brooklyn College, students, staff, and faculty came together to fundraise, to pull together crates of water, boxes and boxes of necessities, of the basic necessities of life to send to the region. We've also provided personal counseling and other forms of resource support for those here in our community most affected by the tragic unfolding of the natural disaster. Brooklyn College is not new to this question of the scientific study of the changing environment and how it affects, in particular, social justice of communities that are most vulnerable. Following Hurricane Sandy, which devastated parts of New York City in 2012, the Science and Resilience Institute at Jamaica Bay was founded with Brooklyn College as its primary partner to study the resilience, the biodiversity, and the response and adaptive capacity of New York City's coastal regions. And additionally, students here at Brooklyn College in the Urban Sustainability program regularly use this borough as a laboratory and a classroom to investigate our response to changes in the environment from the perspectives of economics, sociology, and earth and environmental sciences. And for us collectively to weather a storm like the hurricane season that has hit the Caribbean region, we have to have experts from across a whole range of disciplines who can come together and try to strategize about how best to respond to the crisis. We need people from psychology, history, environmental science, across a whole range of academic disciplines. And today's conference is an opportunity for us to convene, to deliberate on best practices in response to the consequences of disasters. And as part of our mission here at Brooklyn College, I promise that we will bring our intellectual capacity, our creative juice to these kinds of problems, and we will continue to deliberate and bring the creative capital and the intellectual capital that we have to the service of the greater public good. Before I end, I want to say a special note of thanks to the Mellon Foundation and to all of the faculty, students, and staff, many staff hours, that helped make this possible today. And I am pleased to introduce the University Dean for Recruitment and Diversity, who will speak next, Ms. Arlene Torres. She is past president of the Puerto Rican Studies Association, among other honors. And Arlene, welcome to the podium.
Bienvenidos y bienvenidas. Welcome. President Anderson, thank you for that generous introduction and the support that you and your staff at Brooklyn College and throughout CUNY have provided. Mayor of San Juan, Carmen Yulín Cruz, scholars and presenters, we are honored, truly honored to have the opportunity to engage in dialogue with leading to collective and concerted action for change. This event would not have been possible without the foresight and the creativity of faculty and students at Brooklyn College and throughout CUNY. My heartfelt thanks, mil gracias, to Professors Liv Yarrow, Reynaldo Ortiz-Minaya. If the two of you could please stand and be recognized. And to my colleague, Dr. Victoria Stone Cadena, who helps to support the Mellon Foundation grant. Please stand. You, our colleagues, together with the faculty and the staff and the students at the Department of Puerto Rican and Latino Studies, embody what we strive for at CUNY, scholarly and pedagogical excellence. With the generous support from the Mellon Foundation, the Mellon Faculty Diversity Career Enhancement Initiative, and the Mellon Mays Undergraduate Fellows Program aims to develop faculty and students by providing sustained mentorship in reading, writing seminars, and a series of professionalizations, workshops, and conferences, including the conference that we are hosting today. As stewards of these resources, you, the faculty, and the students, remind us that if we attend to the future professoriate via pipeline initiatives, the transformative possibilities around the globe are endless. A diverse community of faculty, students, and staff empowers and emboldens CUNY throughout the nation and around the globe to be better, and CUNY is better for it. Today we come together as a broader community of scholars, public intellectuals, community leaders, and concerned citizens to focus on the hurricanes that have precipitated a humanitarian crisis in Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands. Communities throughout the Caribbean archipelago and the diaspora have been prompted to respond to the crisis, developing short and long-term strategies to support the displaced and truly create our world anew. Systems of higher education, including CUNY, are doing their part because it is the right thing to do. We have a moral compass. And they do so, we do so, because we are committed and generous souls. We go the extra mile. For many of us in the region, our familia, our friends, our colleagues were and continue to be in harm's way, and we are striving to understand as a community how we can bring our knowledge to bear on this crisis. We know that our collective action matters. We matter. Throughout the day, we will have the opportunity to further develop an appreciation for the critical work being undertaken by the mayor and her staff, scholars from the University of Puerto Rico, Sagrado Corazon, George Washington University, and the City University of New York. I know that we have the power and the know-how to create the change that we want to see. Adelante, porque sí se puede. I also want to extend a warm welcome to President Vince Boudreau, the president of the City College of the City University of New York.
I have to tell you a little story. I am one among 5.5 million Puerto Ricans in the United States who braced as Hurricane Irma hit Puerto Rico and sighed a bit of relief when it wasn't as bad as we expected. Then Hurricane Maria came along, and I, with all the Marias everywhere, wished it had some other name, any other name, except that sacred name. The hurricane separated us from our family, our friends. No communication. We saw the images on social media, the news, about how Puerto Rico was ravaged. La Isla del Encanto was suffering devastation, and we felt helpless. And in many ways, we still do. We saw the destruction to homes, to Mother Earth, tragic death of family and friends. We were gripped with a sense of fear and helplessness and hope and prayer, all at once. My family and friends, after speaking with them, I spoke to my father 8 weeks after the hurricane hit. 8 weeks, why? Because he lives in Adjuntas, in the mountains, and the signal was bad before the hurricanes, and now it's definitely worse. So I had to wait for him to call me. They shared that they experienced a fear unlike any other they've ever known. And of course, for those of us who were just waiting to hear word, it was a time of great distress. Que Dios tenga misericordia de Puerto Rico y que bendiga Puerto Rico. And so here, what the people did here, they said, no, we have to help, we have to do something. So that they felt sort of helpless, but they got together, they stood up, and they actually mobilized. And people here in the audience, they moved to action. So among you sit people who went, who took planes to Puerto Rico, who sent packages, who organized here in New York City. And thank you. Thank you. There was a collective sense of community. This sense of fear and helplessness, I was thinking about why Honorable Mayor Carmen Yulín Cruz Soto, why people wanted to flock to see her, why they get so excited to see her. I was contemplating that. Why? Because among the people, right, that helplessness that we were sort of struggling with and feeling, from that rubble of helplessness, we heard a voice, a woman's voice, rise up from San Juan, Puerto Rico. It rose up so loud and clear that it inspired determination in the Puerto Rican diaspora. That's why I'm very excited about our keynote speaker. She is officially the mayor of San Juan, but she has become the mayor of all Puerto Ricans everywhere. She spoke truth to power and declared that Puerto Rico was in dire need of help when others claimed alternative facts. She stood up, didn't back down when they came after her. She set herself apart and won the respect of all who were appalled at the inadequate response to the humanitarian crisis of 3.5 million US citizens in Puerto Rico. A graduate of Pearls, Abigail Casillas Rodriguez, wrote a poem a while back titled Boricua, Warrior, Woman. If you don't know, Boricua is another term for Puerto Rican. And that fits the description of Honorable Mayor Carmen Yulín Cruz Soto. She is a Boricua, warrior, woman. I heard her this past Monday at the New York City Council's celebration of resiliency in Puerto Rico. And so you came to the right place today to be inspired. Just to let you know, you have come to the right place. And so here, speaking truth to power, I want to tell you just a little bit quickly about the department. Students who were students here at Brooklyn College in the late 1960s rose up, and they were filled with hope and a vision that they can see themselves in the curriculum, that they can learn about Puerto Rico and learn about the Puerto Rican diaspora. And so some of them are here today. Can you stand up just quickly? Stand up. Retired Vice President Milga Morales, Tony Nadal, and some others. They founded the Department of Puerto Rican Studies. And so we honor you and we give you thanks. Those young founders, students did that. And so for all the students here, you can make a difference. You can change the world and you can change people's minds one at a time. And sometimes even more than one at a time, right? And so that is powerful. And through education, that is key. And that's why we're all here. Hope is a subversive power. And so with that hope, it remains alive through Pearls, Puerto Rican Latino Studies. We became more inclusive, right? So it wasn't just Puerto Rican studies, but Puerto Rican and Latino studies now. And so here, as part of that wonderful mosaic that Pearls is, it is my pleasure to introduce to you the faculty member who set into motion this special event and whose Caribbean heritage is from the Dominican Republic. Dr. Reynaldo Ortiz-Minaya is an assistant professor in Pearls, a world historical sociologist, and CUNY Mellon Faculty Diversity Career Enhancement Initiative Fellow. It's a big mouthful, but Dean Torres applied for that grant, got it, and that's why we're all here today with the mayor of all Puerto Ricans, right? So, he wanted me to share with you this in particular. Fernando Pico, an esteemed Puerto Rican scholar, recently passed away on June 27th, 2017. The day before that, he shared with Reynaldo. He is Reynaldo's mentor. he was writing the preface of the introduction of Reynaldo's book. The night before he passed, he shared with Reynaldo, he said, no. Knowledge needs to connect to knowledge on the ground. Otherwise, there's no point to it. And so he has taken that to heart. Reynaldo is a teacher, scholar, activist, very proactive with students and faculty alike. He's an expert in the areas of mass incarceration on a global scale and structures of slavery and forms of labor. His scholarly activities take him to Cuba, Bucharest, Islamabad, Puerto Rico, South Africa, and he is fluent in various languages. He has established a rapport with students and faculty, and it is my pleasure to present to you Dr. Reynaldo Ortiz-Minaya, who will serve as today's MC, Master of Ceremony. Welcome.
Good morning, buenos días, bienvenidos y bienvenidas. First and foremost, I would like to thank the ancestors for granting me the opportunity to be here before you. I stand here before indigenous and African ancestors that have given me the strength to fight injustice and never give up. I definitely cannot proceed without thanking certain individuals whose without their participation, this would not have been possible. Obviously, President Michelle Anderson, thank you for your support. Dean Arlene Torres, thank you for your guidance. And this one is a bit off script. My co-organizer, Professor Lee Yarrow, wanted no acknowledgement. Okay? But in the wee hours of the morning, whether it was 2 a.m. or 3 a.m., I'm always on the computer, I'm always texting. She was always there and willing to support this cause, and not only for the Puerto Rican people, but also especially what this means for Latin America and the Caribbean people in the entire Americas. That said, there are particular individuals and dignitaries which we cannot proceed without acknowledging. Jonathan Soto, Executive Director from the Mayor's Office for Faith and Community Partnerships, representing Mayor de Blasio. Honorable Joanne Simon, Member of Assembly. The Honorable Adrian Bonilla, Deputy Borough President of Manhattan. And previously, we had Mr. Wayne Williams, Deputy Chief of Staff, representing Acting Kings County District Attorney Eric Gonzalez. That said, why this event and why now? This event is for my students. I thank you for trusting me with your mind. I thank you for your patience, and given how aggressive I am on you in terms of understanding what is the importance of critical thinking and what that means. At Brooklyn College, it is my understanding that the mission statement of this university, this college, is nothing without great effort. That is exactly what life is. We must always push forward in light of the hardest obstacles. And once we obtain those particular goals, we know exactly what it is we have to esteem and to what extent. That said, I was tasked to write an introduction, opening remarks. But the opening remarks are more especially about what world we live in, what is going on with Puerto Rico, and the questions my students in their misconfusion and in their misunderstanding ask me about: what is the future of Puerto Rico? What is the future of Puerto Ricans? And I say to them, we must understand history to understand why we have individuals in this world like Mary Juling, following the lineage of women leaders from Puerto Rico, Maria Mercedes Balbudo, Luisa Capetillo. Is a lineage of strong Puerto Rican warriors coming all the way from the 19th century into the 20th and into the 21st century. That said, I would like at this point to introduce Melissa Mark Viverito. Melissa Mark Viverito serves as the Speaker of the New York City Council, the first Puerto Rican and Latina to hold citywide office. She represents the 8th District, which includes El Barrio, East Harlem, and the South Bronx. Born in Bayamón, Puerto Rico, she worked over a decade in local activism, nonprofit organizations, and grassroots labor organizing before being elected to the City Council in 2005. She was unanimously elected to serve as the New York City Council Speaker in January 2014. That said, please welcome Melissa Mark Viverito to Brooklyn College.
Buenos días, buenas tardes, buen día, que va y viene por ahí. Look, I'm going to be very brief. So good morning to everybody. It really is a pleasure to be here. I want to thank Michelle Anderson, the president of Brooklyn College. I want to thank Brooklyn College. I want to thank Reynaldo. I want to thank everyone that has helped put this event together, because it is a very important conversation to have, and all of the panelists that are going to be contributing. You're going to hear a very inspiring speech by my good friend, the mayor of San Juan, Carmen Yulín Cruz. But I come here to also challenge each and every one of us that we make a long-term commitment to the future of Puerto Rico. This is a catastrophe like no other. It has touched many of us deeply and permanently. I, born and raised in Puerto Rico, that my mother continues to live in Puerto Rico. I have gone back 3 times since the hurricane. We all know that this is a long-term commitment. And we are seeing a level of disrespect, of benign neglect, of turning its back, this United States, on Puerto Rico. The racism in terms of the policies that are being implemented, the lack of attention that's being given or seriousness. And then to have a governor who sits idly by as we get slapped around and disrespected. That is why the voice of Yulín has resonated so deeply. Because in light of all of that disrespect and neglect and denigration, someone had the ovaries to stand up and speak out. So as we sit here and engage in this conversation, I am going to ask for your support, because I ask for that support for Puerto Rico. And we know that the diaspora has been instrumental and critical in amplifying the voice of Puerto Rico when it is needed. And Yulín is a strong voice, pero ella no puede hacer esto sola. Y nos necesita a nosotros. So her leadership is key, but our ability to organize and push back and demand that this government and this administration do what is right by Puerto Rico, because this administration and this country owes a lot to Puerto Rico, right? And let's not forget that. We need the diaspora, but we need the solidarity beyond the diaspora. We did it, and successfully we were able to get the U.S. Navy out of Vieques because of the diaspora and the solidarity that was built beyond, right? Beyond Puerto Rico, beyond the Puerto Rican community. We were able to get Oscar López Rivera home because of the solidarity that we built within the community and outside of the community. So we can do this. But the future of Puerto Rico, and that will include the status, because that conversation has to happen too. The future of Puerto Rico has to be one that is defined by Puerto Ricans, that it is defined and respected and not imposed, because we've had that happen for way too long. So when we think about building resilient communities, rebuilding a future for Puerto Rico, looking at building a more sustainable future, that is all has to be defined by us. And so that's my challenge to all of you, as you will be inspired by the mayor, is that we all need your commitment to make sure that we do what is right by Puerto Rico. I know that I'm in it for the long haul, and I hope that I can count on your support, because the people that are staying in Puerto Rico, and they want to stay in Puerto Rico, but those who feel forced and have no other option but to leave, don't want to leave. So we need to do what is right by them so that they can build a more prosperous future. So thank you to Brooklyn College again. Really important that you are making this commitment. I want to thank everyone that has helped in any which way. I know many of you have either taken trips or have contributed, given monetary contributions. Otherwise, it means a lot. And so for me, it's been inspiring to see the level of support that has come along. So thank you so much for being here. I want to thank Lorraine, who is also a special advisor to the mayor, but personally she's a mentor to me. But her voice has been instrumental in guiding the mayor in terms of the response that we provide to Puerto Rico. The city of New York has stood strong and will continue to stand strong. So thank you very much. Have a great, great conference. Gracias.
So the reason why we're here, how do I introduce someone who needs no introduction? As Dr. Maria Perez y Gonzalez shared, the night before Dr. Fernando Picot passed, I had a lengthy conversation with him. And he tells me, what's the point of your book if it doesn't connect to the people on the ground? What's the point of understanding history, and particularly Puerto Rican history, if there's no connection to the real people that suffer on a daily basis? Unfortunately, he passed the following day, but his teachings always stick with me, similar to current mentors of mine who are currently in the room, Sergeant DeLacy Davis from Black Cops Against Police Brutality, Mickey Melendez, founding member of the Young Lords Party for Self-Defense. Mayor Carmen Yulín Cruz Soto. I was recently in South Africa, and I was basically attempting to reach her by phone, by text, by email. Nothing worked, but I was insistent on doing so. It was a 7-hour difference, and I was wondering, it was 4 o'clock in the morning in San Juan, and it's 11 o'clock in the morning in South Africa, but I'm still going to text her just in case. She might be up. She responded. I wanted to invite her here so my students can see exactly what it means to fight injustice in light of structural, historical, and colonial oppression. I want to make that very clear. Fernando Picot was scheduled to be a guest speaker in my course, Introduction to Puerto Rican and Latino Studies. Unfortunately, that can no longer be the case. And I know he's looking down at this time and saying, good job. I'm personally honored to receive Mayor Carmen Yulín Cruz Soto and to let her know that we here at Brooklyn College stand with La Isla del Encanto, and we stand with Puerto Rico. I also have to say this has been transmitted live as we speak to Puerto Rico to the Republic of Cuba, and to South Africa. I was trying to find adjectives to describe her demeanor, her personality, and one particular word always kept resonating. There's a particular fire about Mayor Carmen Yulín Cruz Soto. Still waters run deep. And I can definitely share with you that it has been my greatest academic honor to present to you at this moment the Mayor of San Juan, Puerto Rico, the Honorable Carmen Yulín Cruz Soto.
Can you see me? If anyone can read this, please know that we have not had any food or water for the past 7 days. That we have a child who has asthma. We have no way of giving her medication, and that we need help. Communications were non-existent. And I got that text. And the sheer idea of hearing that somebody needed help in such a desperate manner just rushed through me like a lightning bolt. Just imagine, close your eyes, everybody, for a second. Close your eyes. And just imagine that the last thing you heard was a 9:00 p.m. press conference from this small woman, who some call nasty, telling you that everything would be okay and that when we could communicate again, help would be on its way. And the next thing I get is this text, which I'm sure was sent to many other people. So I had a chance to either respond or put it in the back burner because I had so many things to do. The sheer desperation of when your world is turned upside down. Of when you notice that as you walk outside of a coliseum, what you knew before was no more. Was undescribable. And as we went through the city of San Juan, where at this point we didn't know what we would expect. As we went through that, we started cutting trees and pushing them aside because it was very clear to us from the beginning that this was about saving lives. Nothing else. This was about saving lives. It didn't matter if that life was white or black or LGBT or Baptist or Catholic. It was about saving lives. So we went to this place called Caimito. Many people may not know it, but San Juan, 60% of San Juan is rural. And we found this family with this child who indeed had not had any asthma medication for 7 days. And as we're approaching to leave, one of the neighbors said, "You may want to take a look at that house over there, because a woman needs a respirator in order to breathe. Her generator has been silent for a few hours, and we haven't seen her. So the medics went over there and found this lady gasping for air. So when I said we are dying here, and you are killing us with your bureaucracy and your inefficiency, I wasn't being dramatic. I was merely just uttering the words that others could not utter. I was merely telling the world what that person had told me. If anyone can hear us, please help. Because 3 weeks after Hurricane Maria devastated us, and it's been 72 days. Now, you count Maria, we count from Irma. Melissa Mark Viverita's mother has not had running water or electricity, which is something that she will never tell you, for the past 72 days. And we started just doing the job of reconstruction. I started learning one basic thing that I want to share with you is you cannot rebuild, you have to transform. You cannot go back to the things they were. So we started pushing on. We knew our HIV clinic had to reopen real quickly. We knew our chemotherapy patients had to start getting their treatment very quickly. We knew our dialysis patients had to go back to taking care of themselves. And as we pleaded for help, and we did what we could, FEMA was telling us to register via internet. Now, I want you to understand there's no power, there's no communications, there's no phones, there certainly isn't any internet, and FEMA is telling everybody you need to register via internet or call on the phone. Well, I did what my mom told me to do. I stood quiet. And then they came to my place of work and where I had lived for the past 60-somewhat days, the Coliseo Roberto Clemente, and I can tell you it's no Mar-a-Lago to sleep in a cot. And this may seem amazing, but the stark contrast of what we were seeing and what we were experiencing and what was been told to you was a sheer abomination. You were being fed up a story that wasn't real. And you know, I'm especially grateful to be here at Rican College with 17,600 students. That's more than the police force of all of Puerto Rico put together. Was that for me? Because I was told by one of your faculty members that out of the 255,000 students that you have in the CUNY system, 350,000 is the population of San Juan. 6 out of the 10 campuses that have the highest mobility in terms of going from poverty to non-poverty, 6 out of those 10 campuses are here in the CUNY system. And you say, what does that have to do with Puerto Rico? Well, I am the great-granddaughter of a sugarcane plantation worker. 2 generations removed from extreme poverty. My grandmother came to New York to study when women didn't go to school. And she worked in a cafeteria in the Bronx so that my father could eat at the cafeteria during the day. But I don't know what poverty is because of education. My family was able to claw their way out of poverty because of education. And what does that have to do with a hurricane named Maria? Well, we will no longer in Puerto Rico be able to cover our inequality, our discrimination, and our poverty behind palm trees and piña coladas. We will no longer be able to do that. Nor should we ever have done it. But we did it. So we have to take responsibility for the things we didn't do when we had to do them. And rather than rebuilding, which means going back to the way things were, we have to transform and become a more just, a fairer, a more equitable society, one where the depth of your pocket is not what is at stake, is the depth of your soul that is what counts. And that starts with education. So they came from FEMA to visit me and they asked me for a memo. I said, what? Yes, you need to write us a memo about what do you need. You would think that this was the first natural disaster ever. For heaven's sake, Harvey had just hit. Well, I wrote many memos, not one, many. And I handed them in, and I handed them in, and I handed them in. And, you know, I'm sorry, gentlemen, please allow me just 5 seconds of speaking to the women in this auditorium. Don't play nice. Don't play nice. Because if you play nice, you get the raw end of the deal. So everyone was expecting everybody to be politically correct because, oh, that was the undercurrent. If you say that things are not going the way they say they're going, you won't get any help. Because the guy with the power is going to crush you. And my answer to that was something that I cannot say. But I did what my mother didn't teach me to do, and I love her dearly. I stopped being politically correct. I stopped being nice. And I told the truth. And it is true. It will make you free. Now, that made me a lot of friends, and it also made me a lot of enemies. So that's something you have to know. When you stand up for your principles and your values, you better be willing to pay the price. Right now, people are tweeting their hate away, saying that I shouldn't be here talking to you, that I should be down in Puerto Rico, as if I was the only employee out of the 6,300 employees at the municipality of San Juan. But I am here because the message has to get through. Because there are still people in power that want to say things that are comfortable for them. There are still people that prefer to grade themselves. Who grades themselves in a humanitarian crisis? It should never be enough. If you feed 200,000 people, you should hope to feed 300,000. And if you feed 300,000, you should hope to feed 500,000, and so on and so forth. You know that Carly Simon song that says, "You're so vain, you probably think the song is about you"? Well, you're so vain, you probably think this hurricane is about you. And it isn't about politics. Now, we have to talk about colonial situation in Puerto Rico. But it isn't about politics. Politics get in the way of justice 99% of the time. Politicians get in the way of equity 99% of the time. And it is up to you, not up, look at this. There's one of me standing here, a few other elected officials, and there's tons of you over here, and I don't know how many more watching. So it is up to you, which is something that I have very painfully learned over the past 3 months. It is up to the people to just set the path. And a good public servant will follow the people. A bad public servant will impose on the people. So it's very cliche, but destruction like this gives you an opportunity to look at where you were and what you have ahead of you. And I saw poverty, and I have seen poverty like I have never seen before. The great-granddaughter of a sugarcane plantation worker. I've seen a child being held by his grandmother, look at a bottle of ice water and gasp, because when he touched it, he knew that it would give him what he needed. I've seen people lower their heads when you ask them, have you had anything to eat today? And proud as we are, they say, I'm okay. I've seen mothers sitting down and making sure their child has a plate and not asking for one for herself. I've seen her friends. People say with disabilities, bullshit. There's no disability. There's just things to overcome. Just look in awe, because so many trees and lampposts are everywhere that you can't reach your final destination. I have seen Muslims and Jews and black and white and gay and not gay hold each other's hands and feed each other. So what I have learned from this humanitarian crisis is that we're all human. And I know it seems very simple, but it isn't. We don't look at each other and see humans. We look at each other and see a Muslim or a Puerto Rican or a Jew or a black or a white or a Baptist or a woman or a man. But look at the person next to you. Seriously, look at the person next to you. It's a human being. So it is true, we have been citizens of the United States by birth since 1917, just enough time to be drafted for World War I. But I'm sure that was just a coincidence. But if you cannot commit to the legal imperative, you have to commit to the moral imperative. And the moral imperative is when a human is in need, you go to their rescue. And that is the America that I know. I went to school in Boston University. I got my master's from Carnegie Mellon University. And I saw a diversity in this country that I had not seen in my own. And the tapestry of democracy gets woven every day by our differences, not by our similarities. So I couldn't understand the first 3 weeks why we did not get the help that we were so desperately asking for. In San Juan, with a population of 350,000, we got the first 12 pallets of food, water, and baby food. And I have to tell you, FEMA's baby products are the best. 12 pallets for 350,000 people. The private sector, the educational sector, the non-for-profit sector, the unions came to the rescue. People like the Ricky Martin Foundation and Jorge and Laura Posada and Olga Tañón and Goya and Suiza and Chocolate Cortez, and these names will make sense to all of you that are Latin or Hispanic or Boricua. Because they saw people. They didn't see numbers. They didn't see statistics. they saw people. So while you look, and for the professors and for the students, very humbly, I submit to you that while you look for a solution to a problem, don't look at the numbers. Use the numbers to make sure that the policies that you put forth make sense. But do what the Marines do. You have to adapt, you have to improvise, you have to overcome. It took FEMA about a month to figure out that, heck, we had no internet. We could not connect through the internet. FEMA employees were actually telling mayors inside of Puerto Rico to put their people in a bus, go somewhere where they had cellular signal to have them call, and then submit their requests. And there's nothing more appalling than people with needs of food and water. When you don't have your insulin, because there's no refrigeration, then when the companies tell you, oh, you know, in Africa, we tell people that they can keep their insulin 25 days outside of a refrigerator. And why do you tell us you can only keep them 72 hours? So another thing that I've learned, and I'm very happy that Reinaldo calls me honorable, but you know, I'm not honorable. I'm not. Honorable are the people that have endured, that are still in Puerto Rico today with no water, with no electricity, with no medication, with their children not going to school, and they still believe and they still hope. They are honorable. And I know some people don't like it when I say the things that I say. Well, I am sorry if the truth interferes with their lies. But we will continue to tell the truth and ensure that there's an agenda so that what happened in Puerto Rico doesn't happen anywhere else in the world. Anywhere else in the world. My grandmother died December 20th, 1996, and before she died, she gave me a little script. She scribbled something in a note, which I honestly had never looked at. A couple of days before I left for the Coliseo Roberto Clemente, where my family and myself made home, I read it. I put it where, you know, we all put our important stuff, right? It said, don't let them go hungry. Because she went hungry. I didn't understand what it meant. And you know, it isn't the ones that you help that haunt you. It is the echo of the voices of the ones that you know you cannot help. That accompany you at night when you try to go to sleep. It is the cries of mothers without food. It is the screams of fathers without water. It is the devastation in the faces of HIV patients without medication. As of yesterday, we have picked up in San Juan 166.4 million pounds of trash. 87.7 million of those are debris and vegetative material. As of yesterday, we had fed in San Juan 218,778 people out of the 350,000. And we did it in a sustainable way. And that's another thing that I've learned. And for those of you that have helped, thank you very much. Make sure the help gets to where you want it to get. Because the outpouring of love is so great that sometimes it just hits the same place and the same place and the same place. But people in towns like Morovis, Naranjito, Corozal, Comerío, San Lorenzo, Yauco are not getting what they need. So yes, I am going to share whatever I get in San Juan, and I started to get a lot. The Hispanic Federation gave us 217,000 pounds of food. About 60% of everything we have been able to provide was given from the private sector, non-for-profit sector. About 40% from FEMA, and I received a text this morning saying that as of December 15th, FEMA was pulling out. Just today, I have it right here. The Army Reserve has pulled out because we are in the process of stabilization. I'd like to see who wrote that memo. As of today, about 90% of the people have water. Those that do not have water don't have water because there's no electricity. There's about 50 to 60% a generation of electricity, which does not mean that people have power at their homes. It means that electricity has been generated, that we have a renewed capacity, but it doesn't mean that it's been distributed. Most of our hospitals are still running on generators, which of course are dropping like flies because they're not made to withstand weeks and weeks and weeks of 24 hours a day. And you could, as a doctor, just be there in an operating room and just end up operating with the light in your cellular phone, having to pump by hand the lungs of your patient. And in the midst of that, the human endeavor rose higher than it did before. If I would break down in tears, somebody would tell me, no te preocupes, alcaldesa, vamos a estar bien. Don't worry, mayor, we're going to be okay. Julín, echa pa'lante. That's how I like people to call me, Julín. Not mayor. And I do that because, as Fernando Picó told Reynaldo, truth cannot be separated from reality, so to speak. Well, elected officials cannot be separated from their people, but I have news for you. You do that. You do that. You empower them to feel better than you. You think because they have a little bit more power than you do, that they are entitled to treat you however way they want. Do you think that American Indians wanted to be given an award in front of, and the world is watching. And the heart of the American people runs so deep. So deep. And for every fault that this society may have, there's 100 good traits. For every bad thing that happens, for every black person assaulted, there are the hopes of Martin Luther King and Reverend Barber. For every white kid that gets pulled away because he looks a little different, there are tons of white children that show the world what you guys are all about. For every person that calls me a spick because I'm a Puerto Rican, there's one that calls me a friend. You know why they call us spicks, right? Because I speak English. So you see, do not ever give elected officials more power than you gave them when you voted for them. Don't ever do that. So when I stood up and I said, I am sorry, but I am done being politically correct, that's exactly what I was doing. I was not being a politician, I was being a Puerto Rican. And that's a very different thing, to look at the world from where you're standing and to look at the world from where some politicians stand. Because they think that policies have to apply to everybody but themselves. Because they think they are the truth and they are the power. But you have to understand you are the truth and you are the power. That's what you have to understand. And I have to tell you, it's the deafening sound of the cries of the children and the wind, the sound of that wind that for hours at a time, Is anybody here besides the people that came with me was there when the hurricane hit? Anyone that was there when the hurricane hit? It's a deafening sound. You will never forget it. Because it is a sound of destruction and despair. So you have to make a choice. And crises are about making a choice. You have to choose whether you're going to stand up or whether you're going to just sit down. You have to choose whether you are going to fight for your rights or whether you're going to have somebody else take them away. You have to choose if the best is going to come out of you or if the worst is going to come out of you. Because there are people in Puerto Rico that as long as their street is taken care of, they don't care about everybody else. And I have been accused of many things, one of which is, oh, she's helping other towns in Puerto Rico because she wants to run for governor. Well, I'm not running for governor. I'm not. I'm helping other towns in Puerto Rico because that's what good people do, and that's what elected officials need to do. You need to help one another. That is why it's been done. So when I shook President Trump's hand, he's a very tall man. I'm very little. I said, Mr. President, this isn't about politics. This is about saving lives. And that's what humanitarian crises are all about saving lives. And they're also an opportunity. You have to choose whether you rebuild or you transform. I've chosen, alongside the people of San Juan, transformation. Everything is not good. I am not perfect. Nor would I want to be. I think that would be a little boring. We have all lost something. This crisis has come at a great price. Personal loss, of material loss. But the one thing that we should be grateful that we lost was this veneer that everything was okay in Puerto Rico. Everything is not okay. We had a debt of $72 billion that we have to accept our part of the responsibility for. But we couldn't pay that debt before. We're sure as heck not going to be able to pay it now. Because unless they take our blood, there is nothing to pay it with. So that debt should be wiped out. It's been done before. We have a crippling economic effect that shackles us to a world that no longer exists, and that's the Jones Act. For those of you that don't know, the Jones Act forces us to use only U.S. flagships, or it asks those ships that are not from the U.S. to choose whether they would go to Puerto Rico or go to the U.S. So, of course, you choose the larger market. It was lifted for 7 days in Irma and 10 days in Maria. Not good enough. That is financial domination right there. But our brothers and sisters from the maritime unions also have a right to live and provide for their families. So we have to sit down with our brothers and sisters. We have to make sure that every relief effort and humanitarian effort that comes to Puerto Rico is immediately waived from the Jones Act and set out a path where we can reduce our cost of living from 30 to 33%, which is what is increased by the Jones Act, and our maritime brothers and sisters also can make a living. Because you see, one thing that I've learned during this past 3 months, more than in any other time, is that when you give to somebody, you have to take from somebody else. Resources aren't infinite. But I've also learned that if we sit down and talk about it, and we have one goal in common, things will pan out in a different way. So the Jones Act shackles us to a world that doesn't exist anymore. Because, and now I'm going to have to touch on current events. The tax reform. The tax reform puts an excise tax on products and services coming from Puerto Rico into the United States. So the answer to a devastating blow is another blow. That alone will be more devastating than Maria and Irma put together, because it will have a longer effect on the Puerto Rican economy. It's crippled. We have been intubated, and all of a sudden with that tax reform, the generator will go off. And nobody will be there to pump oxygen into our lungs. Let alone the effect. A single mother with 2 children gets a $75 tax credit. A family that makes she's on minimum wage. A family that makes $500,000 with 2 children get a $4,000 tax credit. I don't know about you, but that doesn't sound very fair to me. So fairness has to be part of what we teach our students, and has to be part of what we preach, and has to be part of how we act. We need a waiver from the Stafford Act. I don't want to continue to rebuild homes with wood and zinc roofs. You see, if your house is made out of concrete, but your roof is made out of wood or zinc, FEMA doesn't help you. If you've been living in the same house that your grandparents and your great-grandparents and your parents have lived, but you don't have the title, FEMA doesn't help you. So we're going to be left in San Juan alone with about 20 to 26,000 homes where people had no insurance, and they really do not have the ability to provide for themselves. So we need a waiver from the Stafford Act. We can't go back to pulling up our grid, our electrical grid, and be addicted to fossil fuel. We have to move to renewable sources of energy, the wind and the sun. And I tell you, I wasn't a believer until we canvassed San Juan, and all of a sudden, there it was, light in this community. And I thought, what is going on here? Well, we had somebody from our administration had insisted that we put some solar lamps. And they insisted so much, Madam President, how sometimes members of your staff insist so much that you say, oh, go ahead and do it. So I said, just do it. I don't care. And all of a sudden, the lamppost was on the floor, but it was still generating solar light. And the community had a place to be at. So we need to look at new alternatives of energy. And we need to have a commitment, just like JFK said, before 10 years go by, we're going to have a man in the moon. Well, before 10 years go by, our electrical grid needs to be placed. So we need a waiver from the Stafford Act so that things don't have to be built the same way they were, but that they can be transformed in a different way. And we do need to sit down and talk about the political status of Puerto Rico. And we need to set out a path of free determination. And there are people in Puerto Rico that would want Puerto Rico to be a state, and they have every right to want that. And there are people in Puerto Rico that will want Puerto Rico to be independent, and they have every right to want that. And we have people in Puerto Rico that want things to remain the same. I think they're wrong, but they have a right to that. And there are people like me that believe in free association. Let's sit down and see what we bring to the table, what you can put on the table, and what our duties and our responsibilities are. Because being part of a democratic society is not gimme, 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 gimme. It's let me see what I can give, and let me see what I can have in return. So you see, there's a marked path. There are things that can be done. And the first thing that you can do for us is not forget us. Don't forget us. Don't let the news cycle forget us. Don't let this out of sight, out of mind keep us in your heart. Because we have a long road ahead of us. The second thing you can do is organize. 100,000 Puerto Ricans have moved to the eastern part of the United States in the past month and a half. We're going to make sure they vote. We're going to make sure they vote. That is such a privilege. Being able to vote is such a privilege. Sometimes it doesn't yield the results that it should, but it's democracy. And I would much rather have democracy with all its faults than lack of it. Because while there's democracy, you have a chance. I'm going to make 2 final remarks. There is a boy that lives in a place called Caimito in Coupé. He's got 140 IQ. He had 86 books. Him and his parents lost what he called a home, which was really a shack. And his only fear was that he had only 7 books left and that all his books were ruined. So I know that all the professors that are here probably have this in their heart, but sometimes it's good to be reminded. You are like Michelangelo on the Sistine Chapel. You can either create hope in your students or fear. You can either ensure they know they can change the world, or you can teach them just to listen to those that tell us that we cannot. That kid wants to be a robotics engineer and an astronomer. He speaks English and Spanish. And he asked me for one thing. He said, "Mayor, can my father get a job?" Because he works a lot of jobs and he doesn't have time to be with me. His mother is an I don't like to call people illegal immigrants, because there's nothing illegal about wanting your dreams to come true. So if there's any dreamers out there, just dream. Dream your life away, because you are the captain of your soul, like that Invictus poem says. The truth is within your grasp. Don't let anybody put makeup on it. As I stand here with these nice boots and nice looking jacket, there are people in Puerto Rico that don't have anything to eat. Not enough oxygen to breathe. There are AIDS patients that don't have their full medication. There are children that are not in school, and some of them will never go back to school. There are women and men grasping for everything they can and doing for themselves, crossing a river to get to the other side to get a bag of Pringles and beef jerky and pudding, because that was part of what FEMA was giving us towards the beginning of this hurricane. Pringles and beef jerky. So, we did not start this fight. And we know we are an island surrounded by water, lots and lots of water, ocean water. We knew that before. But global warming is real. And it has real implications for people's lives. And it destroys people's lives. And if we don't build in resiliency into our communities, into our universities, into our countries, global warming will take the best of us, and those horror movies will be our future, our present. So anyone from the scientific community, please scream and shout. And make sure that somebody out there is listening. I will forever be grateful of that teacher in Austin, Texas that sent me $20. Of that child in Ohio that sent me $1. Of that retired construction worker in Wichita. Places that I've never heard. Because above all, in human crisis, the human soul and the spirit rises high. And I will forever be grateful that I am the great-granddaughter of a sugarcane plantation worker, of a woman that was the first in her family to read and write, and that instilled in me the value of education, to claw herself out of poverty. So don't leave it for tomorrow. Go out today and change the world. Go out today and make a better world. Yes, let's be free of discrimination. And let's know that love is love. And let's know that diversity in a university like this can spring out and just explode and be contagious and be like a good virus that touches every soul. And let's work on putting Puerto Rico not back together, not back on its feet, but transform it into a society that we're all proud of, because we embrace our differences. Let's not belittle each other. And for heaven's sake, don't forget us. Because without you, the world would have not known the injustice and the inequity that we have suffered, and know that it doesn't matter what we have to push aside, we are going to make it. Thank you very much, Brooklyn College, and God bless you. Thank you very much.
We're going to do about 5 to 10 minutes of questions, so I would ask for your linguistic discretion. There are 2 professors here, Professor Liviaro, Professor Alenaja. If you have questions, please approach them at this time. Thank you.
Mike, yeah? Okay. Stand up and say your name and what brought you here.
Hello, my name is Shelby Castillo. I'm from Hamilton College. My grandparents are in Puerto Rico right now, in Canovanas.
Where in Canovanas?
Canovanas.
That's very bad stricken.
My father just went there the other day and brought them food and water and supplies and stuff. And they're doing better, but they still don't have electricity. I actually want to ask you about the colonial status of Puerto Rico, and I wanted to know what you thought, why you think free association is the best path to go upon.
Because the truth is that because we are American citizens, and because more Puerto Ricans live in the States than now in Puerto Rico, we have to look for a way to maintain a relationship, because most people cherish that relationship. And most people cherish their U.S. citizenship. And they want to have free access to the United States and be able to move and not have to go through a lot of cumbersome bureaucracy to do it. So free association will give us, in my opinion, the ability to have the necessary tools to stand up by ourselves, to plug in to the world economy, and to be able to maintain our nationalistic spirit. In the 1960s, independence was like the second option that Puerto Ricans were willing to go for. But in the past 3 elections, less than 3% of the Puerto Rican people have voted for the pro-independence party. So you have to come up with a solution that is non-territorial, outside of the territorial clause, and non-colonial, where the ultimate decisions in Puerto Rico are made by Puerto Ricans. But you also have to respect that relationship that, you know, you're not less Puerto Rican because you live here. You're not. And I've learned that the hard way. Because when we haven't had a voice, you've given us a voice. When we haven't had the strength, you have been our strength. When we have forgotten, you have reminded us. When we go to El Barrio, we see more Puerto Rican flags than you will see in Puerto Rico. Yes, because you know, it is illegal in Puerto Rico to just have the Puerto Rican flag by itself. I do it all the time. So you can't force people to go on a path. You just have to show them a way that is dignified, that gives them more sovereign powers, and that allows us to have the necessary tools financially and politically to move forward. I think what's important is the process. I support, as many other people like Noel Colón Martinez, a process of a constitutional assembly where we elect, and in the United States, everyone knows what that is. You elect a certain amount of delegates and you come up with a new way of government. And as things progress, Puerto Ricans are more able to look at themselves in a different direction. Some Puerto Ricans would like Puerto Rico to be a state. They have every right. I respect their position. I just don't want to disappear as a nation. And I don't think one nation can go inside another nation without eventually it being. The melting pot works, and it melts. So that's why I believe that the right path is free association. I'm not at a majority in the party that I currently subscribe to. The party is kind of divided between the status quo and changing. The status quo doesn't work anymore. It had its advantages at other points in time. It doesn't. It served Puerto Rico well. It doesn't anymore. And every time I say this, the hate meter in the tweet goes like, right? Hey, you got to tell the truth. Can I give you a hug? Don't forget ever where you came from. Never.
We have a question over here from Dr. Milga Morales, one of the founders of the Puerto Rican and Latino Studies Department.
Hey.
Gracias for everything that you've done, mostly raising consciousness and awareness, particularly amongst those here in the diaspora. Some of us are in education, and we've been very concerned because we know we have to deal with the basics, water, electricity, everything that you've mentioned, but we worry about those kids.
But education is a basic service also.
And it's basic. We understand that it's basic. What is going on with the children? What are they going? Are their schools beginning to open? And I know this stretches right into the university as well, but we've heard so little about that.
Well, the schools are beginning to open. They're usually open between 7:30 in the morning and 12:30. There is a situation with the food at the school kitchens because there are still shelters opened in other areas of Puerto Rico. We closed our 7 shelters in San Juan about a month ago, right? About a month ago. But there are still people around Puerto Rico in shelters, and most of the shelters are in schools. So there's been a little friction lately between the people that want their children to go back to school and the people that are at the shelter. So we have to find a solution for that immediately. Because when you take a child out of school, you're also taking a parent's opportunity to work or to have that child cared for in an appropriate way. Some of our children, the hot meal that they eat when they have breakfast and lunch at school. That's one thing. But I am sorry to say that charter schools are rearing their, in my opinion, their ugly heads. And that this situation, and I was against the closing of schools last term. I'm against the closing of schools this term. I think rather than saying we shouldn't have 27 kids to a classroom, maybe we should say we should have 20 kids to a classroom, and then the school is not big, it's just appropriate, right? But we need to ensure that our schools are the focus of our communities, not only for the children, but for the migrant wave that we are getting from the Dominican Republic. and also to ensure that our schools are a place for health to be taken care of for the child and for the parents, for literacy to start happening. Because some of our children, and I've seen this with my own eyes in San Juan, they're learning how to read and write, but their parents don't know how to read and write. So that our schools are not only bilingual, but trilingual. You know, soon we're going to have to start learning Chinese, Mandarin, if not already. So it's not going as fast as it should. There was a bit of a scandal a couple of weeks ago because the educational system was saying that the Army Corps of Engineers wasn't allowing them to open the schools. And the Army Corps of Engineers said, no, that's not our responsibility. So this is another thing that happens in crises. Everyone starts to play, ¿cómo se dice papa caliente en inglés? Oh, it is? Just hot potato? So everyone starts saying, no, it's your responsibility. And no, it's your responsibility. Well, it's all of our responsibilities. So the communities, fortunately, have been very vocal about not closing the schools. So we hope and we expect that they are open. We have 3 municipal schools in San Juan. They opened about a month ago, but I only opened them when I was sure that they could work the entire schedule. So they run from 7:30 in the morning till 5 o'clock in the afternoon, as they did before. The only one that has been somewhat affected was our sports school, because the facilities, the beautiful facilities they were bad before and they were crushed after Hurricane Maria. So we're waiting for the insurance money to transform them and make them into what our children need. But the next fight that we're having, and we're joining the American Federation of Teachers and Randy Weinhardt and the local Asociación de Maestros en Algaria, is fighting against the privatization of our schools through charter schools. But you're absolutely right. Children have to go to school, and I don't subscribe to that of let's move them to the States so they can go to school, because then we will be left without anyone to transform. So we have to make sure that we transform without judging those that left, but enticing them to come back with good support systems, educational systems, health systems, and with ensuring that we have an economy that allows people to have living wages, which we didn't before. So this is an opportunity to change things and look at them in a different way.
Thank you.
And thank you for doing that. That was great. That must have taken a lot of... Anybody else? There? One over there. Who has, oh, you guys, can I take the man first? You can, yeah, I'll repeat it.
During this crisis, I'm David Galarza. I work for a labor union. I live here in New York City.
Which labor union?
CSC Local 1000 asked me. We've been working with the AFT too, supplying those water filters in Puerto Rico. My family.
What he's talking is the American Federation of Teachers teamed up with Operation Blessing, Toad, Maritime, Hispanic Federation, and the municipality, and I'm missing somebody else. And they did this thing, and you can go online and donate. It's called Operation Agua. Operation Agua provides, with your donations, clarity filters to people all over Puerto Rico in order for them to have healthy food, because they may have water, but not enough food. We have another foundation that we started because we needed a legal framework for all the money that people were sending to San Juan. It's called Somebody Help Us, alguienaayúdenos.org. So you can also donate there if you want.
So my family's from the pueblito de Florida, not
Florida.
Orlando, not
Florida,
Miami,
yeah.
but the pueblito de Florida. And I have two questions on two things that you raised. One is about the Jones Act. Mm-hmm. The second one is about the debt. As we speak, La Junta is meeting in San Juan. Mm-hmm. And they're also going to be meeting here in New York City on Monday.
In New York City on Monday.
If you were in the audience what would you tell those members of La Junta? And
Get out of my country.
And number two.
I'm serious. That's
Okay.
what I tell them. Get out of my country. I would use the words of Gandhi. It is time, sir, that you recognize you are masters in somebody else's land.
And number two, about the debt. I'm sorry, not about the debt, about the Jones Act. You've been a big supporter of the labor union movement.
Yes.
The AFL-CIO has been very clear in its support for the Jones Act. How would you get into the heads of the leadership of the AFL-CIO to let them know that the Jones Act is killing Puerto Rico?
Well, you keep talking, you keep presenting the facts, and you don't let anything stop you. I think the labor movement needs to be fortified in Puerto Rico. In the past few months, a few pieces of legislations have passed that have taken back the labor movement in Puerto Rico. We are the only municipality that has recognized workers' right to collective bargaining in San Juan. That doesn't mean they get everything they want or we give them everything they need. We are going to have some very tough times in the next year, especially because municipal income has decreased by 30 to 40%. Just so that you get an idea, payroll in San Juan is about $25 million a month. A month. Yes. So it's very harsh when you don't have your economy going. That's why we need our power so that we can get our economy going, especially tourism. But you sit them at the table. That's why although I think, and I am very convinced, that it has to be completely eliminated, I also think that we have to sit down with our maritime brothers and sisters to show them the fact, to show them why it is really damaging for Puerto Rico, and to set out a path for it to increasingly disappear. So that's what I'm calling for, is for an immediate waiver on humanitarian loads that come to Puerto Rico. South Africa is a place that has wanted to send humanitarian loads to Puerto Rico, and they haven't been able to do so. So that is why. But 17 votes it took for England, 17 votes for England to decide that they weren't going to allow their ships to have as part of their cargo slaves. 17 times across the years. So just because somebody says no, you just don't listen. You keep on pushing on. You never let their answer interfere with what you want.
Okay,
and I think the Boricuas here had one. Can I have one last question? Just one last question. Plus, they have, I love that flag. They had a question, right? Did you have a question here?
Hola, Carmen Yulín. Because it's the paranda season, 1, 2 y 3. A levantar, mi lindo Puerto Rico se va a levantar. My question is, Utuado. Somos el grupo de las enfermeras y doctores con la 1199 de CIU, con las enfermeras de NICENA, con UGT y SPT que fuimos a Puerto Rico and we have a medical mission going on. Okay, and that was a song that was created by un hombre de un pueblo y se llama A Levantar Puerto Rico. But my question is, Utuado, everywhere people are asking about the bridge of Utuado and how long is that going to take and what do we have to do and what can we do and how can we push here, diaspora here, to get that bridge up?
Utuado is one of the hardest stricken towns. It was totally without communication for the longest time. But like Utuado, Naranjito, Corozal, and other towns are like that. We have some bridges in areas in San Juan that haven't fallen but are on the cusp of happening. You all have to become activists. I'm sorry to tell you. You have to stop watching the news and you have to start making the news. You know, you have to, yeah, that's what you have to do. You have to write to your congressman or congresswoman, to your alderman, to your assemblyman. You have to ensure that the Puerto Rican diaspora, which has always had a very loud voice, now uses a megaphone for that voice. And you have to ensure that our brothers and sisters from the United States understands that their heart, huge as it is, giving as it is, must continue to push on, not only in Puerto Rico, but anywhere in the world where another human being is in need. And you have to make sure when there's injustice, you push back. When somebody tweets something that rather than unites, divides, you push back. Not with insults, but with truth, with activism. So you write every day for 2 years. I wrote a letter to President Obama asking for the release of Oscar López Rivera every day for 2 years. It was the same letter. I'm sure nobody read it, but finally somebody got fed up and said, "Dear Representative Cruz, we have acknowledged your," and they set the number of the letters. "We will assure you your letters will be brought to the attention of the committee that," well, you know, I don't know if it did or it didn't, but do something. Do something. You did something. You went down to Puerto Rico and you helped and you changed and touched the lives of people. You can do it from here. You can donate to the American Federation of Teachers and Project Agua. You can donate to Somebody Help Us, alguienaayúdanos.org. You can tweet. You can retweet. You can write. Just don't forget us. Say it with me. Just don't. Oh, you've forgotten me already. Just don't.
Don't.
Come on, say it again. Stand up and say it. Stand up and say it. Just don't.
Don't.
Just don't.
Forget us.
Just don't forget us. Nunca. Viva Puerto Rico.
Viva Puerto Rico. So that concludes this morning session with the Honorable Mayor Carmen Yulín Cruz Soto. If you are interested in further interacting with the mayor, right outside of the building in the West Quad, she's going to entertain individuals briefly. If you registered for the afternoon sessions, please direct yourself to the Student Center. Thank you very much for your attendance, and please don't forget Puerto Rico and do something.